Hello everyone, thank you for joining us in this edition of The Inside on Equinoxe Television. I am Bable Jonathan. In this edition of the program, we are going to be looking at the situation of human rights in the Central African sub-region, notably the countries covered by the United Nations Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa, Cameroon, Burundi, Central African Republic, Congo, Chad, Equatorial Guinea, Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Gabon, and Sao Tome and Principe. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our guest today is Noum Sangare, Regional Representative of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Central Africa. Thank you for joining us today.
Good evening.
Before now, you served in Cameroon as a worker at the United Nations Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa, and now you're back as the regional representative of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Central Africa. Tell us more about yourself.
Thank you very much for being here, for having me, and I'm honored to come back indeed to Cameroon, which I believe is second home for me, as you rightly pointed out. I'm a product of this country from a learning perspective, and that poor English you are getting from me today, I remember my first professional English lessons. I got them from the Boya University, and then I went through a diplomatic training at URIC when I was serving at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in Mali, and before coming here from 2005 to 2011 to serve at the UN Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa. I feel humbled and privileged at the same time to come back 11 years later and serve as the regional representative and director of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Cameroon. So I feel home here. I'm coming back from the ICC, the International Criminal Court. The two country offices in Cote d'Ivoire and Mali that I managed over the past 5.5 years, based in Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire, as the ICC representative for these two countries, but also taking on other missions, assignments in the region, in the Africa region, more generally speaking. It was a rewarding experience for me to serve in that capacity, to assist in addressing the four set of crimes under the ICC jurisdiction that have been under consideration in the two situations for both Cote d'Ivoire and Mali, based on the incidents that happened in these countries and the referral of the situations in these two countries to the ICC by the states themselves.
What are the four sets of crimes under the ICC?
Crimes against humanity and war crimes, genocide, and crime of aggression. These are the four crimes in the Rome Statute that established the ICC. I'm not saying all set of crimes have been necessarily committed in the two countries. The cases that have been before the ICC relate much more to the war crimes and incidents that may amount to genocide and crimes against humanity. The crimes of aggression took time before there was an agreement of the definition and how this can be activated within the jurisdiction of the ICC from an agreement the state parties to the Rome Statute have reached in Kampala later on.
How has the ICC been handling the cases of Mali and Ivory Coast?
The cases are going on, and in the Côte d'Ivoire case, the Côte d'Ivoire 1 case is now at the stage of completion because of the acquittal by the appeals chamber against the defendants, the former president and former minister. Yeah, absolutely. And in Mali, there's a second case on trial now. The first one is at the stage of the reparations. The case against Mr. Al-Mahdi for the attacks against the mausoleums in Timbuktu. Individual and collective reparations are now being served by the Trust Fund for Victims of the International Criminal Court. And the second related to more complex cases, including gender-based violence incidents. The trial is ongoing, and it's against Mr. Al-Hassan. So we expect a decision from the trial chamber anytime soon from now, and we'll see what would decide the judges based on the evidence put forward by the prosecutor, the legal representatives for victims, but also by the defense of the defendant.
Right, now let's come back to Central Africa. What is the state of human rights in the countries covered by the United Nations Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa?
Thank you. This is a very interesting question, but at the same time not easy to answer, because the states can be looked at differently in each context. And it's difficult to sum up and put a marker on something that you can attribute to all states taken together in the region. What I can reasonably say is that much has been done, achieved by the states and other key players in this field, including civil society, national human rights institutions, international partners, to advance human rights and democracy in the Central Africa region. But more needs to be done. We know that elections are still subject to a lot of problems. Violence in the context of elections arising from a number of practical issues when it comes to preparing elections, ensuring a violence-free pre-election campaign, and making sure electoral operations are conducted in a way that is deemed to be free, fair and transparent, and making sure also that the results would reflect the voices of the people without any confrontation. These are the pieces of the puzzle, the complex puzzle, still to be fixed in the region. But I think states are making efforts that we, as the UN Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa, are happy to accompany with technical expertise, with dialogue with the different constituencies, with advocacy, and this is also being pursued through new approaches from the perspective of prevention and the perspective of greater responsibilities, roles by national electoral entities, by national human rights institutions. When it comes to another set of pertinent size of human rights, I've been referring even today, speaking to some colleagues, the reading I had more recently from the 2022 poverty report from the World Bank. Among the top 10 countries with the highest poverty rates in the world, I was surprised to see that 5 are located in Central Africa. I was inviting my colleagues to look into that report and see what are the underlying factors for this reality, because poverty is definitely a challenge in terms of the realization of human rights. Poverty in all its dimensions and forms, not only the income-related poverty, because with $2 or $3 a day, I don't think one can afford what is needed for a life in dignity, a life free from want, with access to education, quality education, to healthcare services, to a decent job, employment opportunities, and so on. So this is an indication that there are some challenges that we should be looking into, to analyze and see with the states and the other essential actors how we can address this from the perspective of the realization of economic, social and cultural rights.
How was violence, crisis, security tensions, and even terrorism affected the rate of human rights violations and abuse in countries like Cameroon, with the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions, the Central African Republic, neighboring Chad, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and others?
To a great extent, insecurities, as you mentioned, are of concern when it comes to human rights challenges that should be taken very seriously. It can be looked at from different perspectives. One, the root causes of these conflicts. Sometimes when you're reading some analysis, you would see that deprivation and inequalities, lack of investment in human capital, discrimination. Sometimes those are factors you will find as the underpinning reasons without meaning at all to justify some acts by armed groups and other groups that are perpetrating unacceptable human rights violations. But these are some of the reasons that you find to be the triggers of these challenging and very unfortunate situations. These crises, the way they are being witnessed on the ground, the way these actors are trying to achieve their goals through violence, is a way also of violating human rights, the right to life, the right to education, the right to development, which more often is not mentioned. Development is not possible in a context where there is a lack of security. And if civilians are subjected to deliberate attacks, and children cannot go to school because there is a lockdown imposed, I think this take away any justification or understanding of some of the frustrations put forward to explain why certain groups, perhaps who believe they are voiceless, are resorting to violence as a way of expression. But more often also, the response to those crises are coming with some level of also attempts against human rights. Because the effects of the response by states, sometimes a group of states, are also not sparing lives of civilian people, are also sometimes in the range of human rights violation triggers and means. This is how also we engage with the states to make sure that, of course, the populations are protected against the acts of these armed groups, but at the same time that the response being given to the challenging situations would not also go beyond that very reason of ensuring that the populations are secured.
The Guardian Post reports notorious gang Microb plunges Douala in panic. According to the Post newspaper, Justice Minister Laurent Isso boycotts court session after being sued for not organizing bar examinations. Another edition of the Guardian Post exclaims, Social Democratic Front SDF party balls ahead of February elective convention. Party bigwigs strike the chairman's decision to unilaterally dissolve regional structures nationwide. The Horizon exclaims, transition the Social Democratic Front SDF party, Najon Fundi, on the right track. The Sun says, during the United States Africa Summit, government pushes more for separatist funders in the United States to be prosecuted. The Post Weekender quotes President Paul Biya, it is time for Africa to start transforming its natural resources. According to the paper, he was speaking during the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit. Municipal updates. As revenue collection work persists, Kumba 1 mayor threatens to petition city mayor. The Guardian Post says, 2023 Finance Bill, 10% tax increase on cocoa beans export to further impoverish farmers. The Herald Tribune. At the end of the November session of Parliament, Kavayege Jibril hails members of Parliament for their efforts in nation building. The Garden Post. Sub-Saharan Africa. Cameroon retains crown of shame as worst jailer of journalists. Municipal updates. To ease ID card production, 500 identification posts to be created nationwide. The Garden Post reports, for crusading peace, democracy across Africa, Dr. Christopher Fomio backs prestigious award from renowned U.S. Institute. The Horizon exclaims, Morocco makes World Cup history.
Now let's talk about your engagement with the states. You brought together officials of human rights commissions from the 10 countries that the UN Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa covers here in Douala, to give them some training in terms of helping them to meet up with the exigencies of the Paris Principles on the independence of those institutions. What's your assessment of the work that they have been doing so far in terms of promotion and promotion of human rights?
Thank you very much for bringing that up. And of course, if you draw a ratio 4 out of 10, you would see that perhaps you are not satisfied. But 4 out of 10 is already, I can tell you, progress in this region. The last time when I was here, there was only maybe 1 or only 2 national human rights institutions that were compliant with international standards of the Paris Principles. And having 4 today is a good indication that things are moving forward and moving forward in the right direction. That's the reason why we organize this kind of gathering, and to have all national human rights institutions all together and exchange on their experiences, their lesson learned, and best practices, and make sure those who have been able to pass the accreditation phase before the relevant international entities could also give some incentives to the others and stimulate their efforts to reach also that level of accreditation. Many countries in the region are giving due consideration to that, and they are making efforts to reach that level of independence, of autonomy, and performance also in the discharge of their mandates in the region.
Only 3 of the 10 countries are today aligned with the Paris Principles. What are the stumbling blocks to the independence of the human rights commissions or institutions? What are the factors hindering them from aligning with the Paris Principles on independence?
The first element is the funding document. The funding document, and the best practices would be to have national institutions established by the law, not by a decree, for example, of the government, of the executive arm of the government, but by a decree at the parliament. A second element where we see sometimes impediments is related to the way the members are designated. Sometimes the members working in these commissions are not enjoying a status of nomination or designation which is free from undue influence. if you can be removed so easily, the way you have been designated, it takes away the level of independence in discharging your functions. Another important element relates to the means of action, the budget, for example. How resources are allocated to the National Commission. The best practices suggest that national human rights institutions get their budget directly from the Parliament. They should be able to put forward their budget requirement and go and defend this budgetary requirement and have them adopted by the representatives of the people that are sitting there and allocating state resources. Another element is how they function, how they are able to make impacts on the promotion and protection of human rights, to show that they are able to monitor, they can receive complaints from citizens, that they can follow up on those complaints and make sure there is redress, make sure that those who are complaining can receive diligent consideration of their cases and ultimately receive an outcome that is deemed to be fair and equitable.
Are you satisfied with what is done in the countries that have aligned with the Paris principles? For example, Cameroon, Rwanda, Burundi. Are you satisfied with what is being done in these countries by the Human Rights Commissions?
You have Rwanda, Burundi, having also a good level of accreditation. When it comes to Cameroon, I think promotion and protection of human rights is an ongoing process. While I can appreciate what the Commission is doing, the level of achievement, of course, as I was able to make an assessment of that recently with the President of the National Commission of Cameroon, there are more to be done. Today, let me tell you, for example, that the National Commission is today present in all regions of Cameroon. A few years in the back, that was not the case. And today, the Commission is receiving its budget from the Parliament in Cameroon. And the President confirmed to me that that budget is even on the increase every year. Even if they are not getting what they are asking, there is every year a slight increase of the budget they are receiving. At least now they are able to deploy in the field, they are able to receive the complaints from the citizens, and they are able to look into that and follow up on corrective action. And we've been discussing on ways to amplify their work in this area. And in the few weeks to come, we are going to have a joint mission to visit some detention centers in Cameroon. This is a good indication that the Commission is mindful of.
Apart from training, what else are you doing to step up the respect of human rights in the Central African sub-region?
Many more beyond this kind of forum, bringing all of them together to discuss and exchange experiences, best practice and lesson learned. We do offer also step-by-step technical advice. I've been recently in Equatorial Guinea, for example, to look at 4 different entities in the country, but none of them being in compliance with the Paris principles. And as a result of this engagement with the government of Equatorial Guinea, we have been able to design a roadmap throughout next year, 2023, by which we help them analyze the law creating the institution that is likely to be much easier to upgrade and to get accredited. We have this expertise in-house to comment on the legislations, the laws funding these institutions, and provide the states with the right formulations, the right provisions, and use that then to formalize the creation, the establishment of the commissions. We are able also to assist them with how they organize themselves in a more practical way on the substantive issues, to have this technical expertise in the field of human rights. We provide them also with assistance in mobilizing other actors, in having a convening power in that sense. Having the National Commission, for example, to have a platform to engage with national constituencies on the side of civil society organizations. This brings all of them together to analyze the situation and make sure the right answers are provided to the problems. We also mobilize on our side partners, be it from the UN system, but also other international partners, to assist in different ways for the national institutions to have all the necessary means they need to have more robust and efficient presences, not in the big cities, but even in the remote areas, how they can deploy and make sure they have a system in place to be able to reach out to everyone, leaving no one behind, and but making sure also they can be reached by everyone to report a situation, to report a case, and expect a solution to be provided.
Now, I want us to go a little more specific with the case of Cameroon, and notably the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country that's been pulling on for over 6 years now. What is your assessment of the situation?
I must say the situation is has improved, but there is still much to be done. It's a subject of concern to us today to still witness a lot of actions from armed groups that do not help ensure a better situation of human rights in these regions. The lockdowns, closure of schools, preventing children to be able to fulfill their right to education is a big problem. Abductions, targeting workers, including humanitarian workers, who are just around to provide assistance services to those who are affected by the conflict. All these represent serious human rights challenges. The response being provided also by the government, we have been able to assess that sometimes civilians are victims of casualties when the government is providing a response to the crisis. This is something that is fitting into our engagement with the government, our dialogue with the government, and also the way more operationally speaking we should be addressing this. Let me remind you about the visit in Cameroon of the former High Commissioner, Madame Bachelet, in 2019 in Cameroon, which was followed by a monitoring mission of our office to these regions. This mission resulted in a series of recommendations that is now cementing our cooperation with the government, looking at what human rights challenges are still on the ground and how we should address them together. This is sometimes efforts behind the scene, but those efforts are real efforts, and those efforts I'm hopeful will bear fruit.
There have been several reports of violations of human rights by soldiers in those two regions. The killing of civilians, burning down of hundreds of villages, destruction of properties, extrajudicial killings going on. What's your sense of saying about that?
This is unacceptable. I think, as I was saying, responding to human rights violations should not result in more human rights violations. And more generally, I think the military role is also to be a human rights defender, to make sure the populations are protected, but not that the population are even more exposed to the military response to the crisis.
About the tracking down and killing of secessionist fighters whose mortal remains are often exposed on the streets of Kumba, Bamenda, and other urban centers. What do you have to say about that? Does that respect the human right approach to solving conflicts?
I don't have an evidence for what you're saying, and I'm not a military specialist. So allow me here not to make a judgment on what is not evidenced at our level. But of course, we can understand if in the battlefield different armed groups are engaged in confrontations, there may be casualties. But for both actors, what should be recalled is that even during a time of conflict, even during war, there are human rights obligations that are still binding on everyone, including the right to life. There is an international set of standards during the conduct of hostilities. A combatant which is not combating anymore, who is injured, should be protected, treated, should not be killed. These are some basic elements of the international humanitarian law.
When people say that microbes are here and there, you begin to run without saying microbe. Are you serious? Every man that called me yesterday, microbes are here and there. Nobody took a picture saying that this is the microbes that are in front of my house. Nobody. I say that the motor bicycle are no more going to collect people from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. till the time that population will be ready to fight against those who are bringing bad news here and there. The second measure is to close what we call the bars. The SDO is going to show the place where the bar has to be closed, because we have many of them where people are sitting to plan bad things in this town. We have the information about those bars, and we are going to close those ones. Those who are bringing cutlasses as their stick, if somebody is somewhere with cutlasses, we go and take him, catch him, and bring him to the judiciary court. Those who are bringing bad news here and there, we have to call for them and bring them there.
The primary actor to protect human rights in the country is the state itself. And that's why we are strengthening the capacity of national human rights institutions, which are the state actors.
There are thieves, there are assaults, there are many things, there are rapes, and we have to fight against it, and you have to bring those people to respond before the justice. Even in the conflict zone, as you say, the violations of human rights are decreasing. The situation of the violations of human rights in the far north region, in the northwest region, in the southwest region, is decreasing from 2019 to now. It's going decreasing. We should acknowledge it. And even in the rest of country where there is no special conflicts, the situation is improving. It's getting better. But what is true is that there remains violation, and there will be violations, because where human beings are, where there are many human beings, you cannot erase violations. We are now watching the World Cup of football, right? Who can mention a team or a single match where there was no violation of the rules? So there cannot be a football match, a single football with 22 players without violation of the rules. So when you have a country with 20 millions, 30 millions of people, there will be violations of law. There are thieves, there are there are assaults, there are many things, there are rapes, and we have to fight against it, and you have to bring those people to respond before the justice.
Now, you're going to be celebrating 20 years of underground work in the 10 countries that the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa of the United Nations covers. But in one of those countries, your offices were shut down, Burundi. What happened? Why were the offices of the United Nations shut down in that country? And what's the situation now?
It's very unfortunate that the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Burundi was closed. The memorandum of understanding that we had with the government was disregarded, and resulting in our office not being able to remain in the country. I think at a time when it was needed to have that office and continue to provide advice, to provide technical assistance, to provide monitoring services of the human rights situation, and to continue providing important contributions to the response requested and expected as per the situation at the time. The human rights situation in the Burundi, like in any other country in the region, remain a matter of engagement between the government and us, to see what are the progress, and beyond the progress, what are the remaining challenges that need to be addressed together. In that sense, I would like to express our appreciation on the invitation extended to me by high-level representatives of Burundi for me to visit the country next year. So next year I'll be going to Burundi and discussing with the government and also other constituencies in the country, including the many human rights defenders that are operating today from outside Burundi because they fear for the security, they fear for their lives. All these will be on the table for discussion, for dialogue, and for a constructive approach in making sure that Burundi will continue to meet its human rights obligations. You know, this office was established by a resolution of the UN General Assembly, and that resolution referring to the two pillars, human rights and democracy, and to the office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to establish and run the office. And the office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights itself has full mandate. If you are not able to monitor what are the problems, how could you provide solutions? Including through dialogue, through advocacy, and where there is a need to speak about it. I think speaking about a problem is a way also of making sure that the problems will be given the attention they merit, and that responses will be provided.
You're celebrating 20 years of existence. What are some of the major achievements that the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa has recorded for the past 20 years? Achievements that have brought positive impact or improvement on the living conditions of civilians, on the respect of human rights.
There are many of them. I can name a few on the side of commitment. Over the past 20 years, many international instruments have been ratified by the states in the region, many of them. And this resulted in enhanced engagement of both regional and international human rights protection mechanisms in all countries in the region. Be it through the independent experts, the special rapporteurs, but also the treaty bodies, the monitoring committees established by each human rights instruments, before which states should be reporting on a regular basis and appearing to defend those reports and follow up after the consideration of the reports, of the recommendations. Today we can be positive about developments on this side. When it comes to also the capacities of national institutions and national actors to understand human rights, to be educated about human rights, about ways to promote and protect those rights. 20 years ago, there was no human rights institution in any country in the region. And today, we just had a ratio that in almost all countries in the region, there is a human rights institution. Some being already accredited at the international level for meeting the international standards. Others being at the intermediate level, Statute B, for example. But others not even being considered yet for any kind of accreditation. We have been able also to enhance the capacities of many other entities within the countries, sometimes within the executive arm of the government, but also within the parliament. Many parliaments have human rights entities to make sure the work at the parliamentary level would also contribute to advancing human rights. Civil society organizations, they are also more capacitated today. They came together into coalitions at the national level, sometimes at the regional level. They are able to write and submit today shadow reports to the mechanisms, and also participate in the sessions before the Human Rights Council and before other mandate holders of the UN system, and at the regional level also, and thereby contribute to improving the human rights situation. And lastly, we have been able to reinforce in an impressive way the human capital in terms of human capacities in the region. We have a fellowship program. We have that opportunity given to scholars, given to professionals, to come at the office and stay with us for months, work on the concrete issues, and then go back to the countries, go back to the professional areas, and from there contribute to improving human rights and democracy in the region. Many of our former fellows, former interns, today are holding senior positions within the government, senior positions within regional and also international organizations. We intend to reinforce all these pillars over the 20 years, if not plus, to come.
With regards to the achievements you just enumerated, has the rate of violations and abuse of human rights dropped in those countries?
I would imagine if these contributions were not recorded, if this space had been left empty, we would have probably had today more human rights challenges. But what is achieved sometimes is not a motive of satisfaction for us. To say we self-congratulate ourselves, job is done, we are happy. We much more look at what needs to be done. Because the risks, the populations at risk, the groups at risk, the rights at risk are that matters most. The reason why, of course, it's good to look back to assess the achievements, but also to understand, learning from experience and lesson learned, what we could have done better. Not necessarily what we can show as an achievement, but what we could have learned, what we can learn to inform progress moving forward. We are more forward-looking. The reason why there are even much more challenges to put under consideration today. Looking at the new forms of threats against human rights, looking at how the expectations of the populations are even high today, higher for more democratic societies, higher for strong institutions, higher for more inclusive development, higher for more justice, for more freedoms. We're looking at those challenges. and engaging with the states in dialogue, in advocacy, in designing programs that we can deliver, programs that we can conduct completion and show the results that are expected from all of us. All of us in terms of international partners of the government, all of us in terms of government, I think we all owe something to the populations. And we are determined to increase our contribution moving forward.
Nuhum Sangari, Regional Representative of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Central Africa, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, dear viewers, for staying with us. That's it for today. Goodbye.